have a quorum both on Zoom and in person, and the agenda was properly posted. So this is the public's opportunity to speak, which we do not have anyone from the public here. So we will discuss and consider the minutes from the July 17th Library Board meeting, which are linked in your agenda.
I motion that we approve the minutes from the July 17th Library Board meeting.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right, motion by Megan, second by Eric. Any other discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstain? Motion carries. Our old business is to discuss strategic planning, so linked in your agenda is the 2024 Library 3-year strategic plan, which included the edits that received from both the facilities meeting and our last library board meeting. There are new opportunities that we are going to be discussing tonight. However, I do feel that having the strategic plan as a guiding document, although it is only 3 years, it gives us direction for some of our budget asks that are going to be discussed in new business, but it also gives us the basis to maybe expand this out to a 5 or 10-year longer term plan if needed. It can constantly be revised depending on if there are new opportunities, but I feel like, in my opinion, we need a foundational document, and this serves as that document, but open to discussion. And if no discussion, there can be a motion. Or I guess we just had discussed strategic planning, so never mind. I forgot, must have left out the consider.
Yep. I was just going to second what Cindy mentioned, that either way, no matter what direction we end up going, still having that framework to kind of go back and look forward, or help us look forward and give us some direction is something we're going to need, especially when kind of goes in conjunction with the budget conversation that we're about to have as well. So I completely agree that we move forward with this and keep working on it.
I'd also like, I guess, the board's recommendation on how we publicly post this information. Would you like it as a separate, right now it's in our agendas, obviously. Our library board webpage has a lot of kind of bigger documents that are listed, and I would maybe advocate for putting this document kind of out there as a separate item so that it can be referred to. But. Right.
Just to confirm, we did finish our thorough review of it.
We did, yes.
So just making sure there are no additional changes that we would need to consider, or anyone else has any other ideas?
And I can bring it back for formal approval with the right language in the agenda as well at the next meeting, which is my mistake. All right, so we can move on then to new business, which is the first line item there is discuss and consider the 2025 library board budgets. So what you'll find, and potentially maybe in a little bit of a out of order under the documents, is the budget request memo, which outlines the asks. There is the library budget worksheet, which is the document that we'll send for, is that on here? The expenses, right? Okay, I obviously didn't print it out. That will go to budget review committee and then to the village board. And then there is a full-time justification description for why which is also part of the strategic plan, but moving the library specialist position to full-time by Q4 of 2025. So the budget request includes increases from last year, and those are to cover the expense of moving Tracy to a full-time position, like I just said. And then also a 25% increase to the library programming budget, which is also listed in the strategic plan as a goal, just due to recovering event supplies and subcontractor fees and all of the supplies needed to put on the level of programming that we have to maintain the level of programming January through September, and then it slightly increase some bigger events throughout the year, and then also that Q4 time period where she is full-time. And there's an additional ask for some DEIBC, DEIABC money to go towards some of the larger programs that we have put on in the past, which a lot of that has also relied on some grant funding, which may not be available next year. Cameron, I don't know if you want to say anything else.
Yeah, the budget worksheet, actually, the total is wrong. It should be $58,329. That $475 is being counted twice. So I did catch that after the fact. Nothing else, I guess. I can speak to the questions on, if there's questions on, the benefits and how they pop in or how we got there. But I guess just a reminder, in 2024, there is a planned use of fund balance that was left over from 2023 of $4,248. So this request is essentially asking for, all the expenses to be fully funded.
Yes. And Tracy, if you're on, I don't know if you have any adjustments from to this budget.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yep.
Yeah. Hi, everybody. Sorry, I'm not there in person. I did just want to point out, this kind of dawned on me the other day. For the last 2 years, we have received a $4,000 donation from the Park Family Foundation and other smaller grants from Sarah Steele and others. I don't think that we should always count on having that $4,000 available to us. To kind of give you an idea of what we put it towards, we used it to cover almost all of our contract with McFarland Library. So I think that maybe we need to consider that in the operational expense line item in case we don't get that money from them. Especially if the expectation is that programming increases by 25% in the fall.
Is there direction from the board to potentially increase the amounts for the library programming beyond the $2,750, based on what Tracy is saying, is to add an additional $4,000 in there?
I so move to add $4,000. Sorry, that's not really well.
We can. Is the rest of the board in agreement with that? I think that $4,000 is high. Tracy, can you talk a little bit about the story time cost that was being covered here? It's how many story times?
So, gosh, I believe if I have my numbers correctly, it was $1,600 in the spring and another $800 in the fall. So that puts us at 2,400. So that should probably be the lowest I would recommend that we go. We could potentially decrease it if the expectation is that I will be running some of those story times in the fall. Once I am full-time, perhaps I could take over the first story time of the month and we keep Miss Heather on to do Zoom Beanie, which would allow us to get that number a little bit lower because it would be in-house. So potentially we add $2,000 to cover that excess.
I think that's a more reasonable request.
So you're saying an additional 2,000 on top of the 2,750 that's listed for library programming as a 25% increase from 2024.
And see, but that we also have the 2,000 ask.
And we also have a 2,000 ask for DEIABC.
I mean,
Last year,
if,
correct me if I'm wrong, Cindy, we did not get any DEI specific funding, correct?
we did not. I mean, knowing that our budget request is, when you look at it, like the library departments and how it has grown over the last 2 years, it's been growing kind of it's been doubling each year. Granted, the amount of money that we are asking for is very small compared to other departments. But I don't see that as a sustainable addition to be, I think the ask of moving to full-time and, the justification for why this benefits the community and why this benefits the department as a whole and how this is going to help this board alleviate some of the pressure on volunteers and do more things for the community is justified. And that includes, the addition of the extra programming. On the other hand, I'm concerned that there has been a lot of effort putting, we have had a lot of special programs due to grant funding, and that's great, but it's not also a sustainable model. And so how do we balance that? I think that like a $7,000 increase is a little too high for my, in my opinion.
Another alternative, Cindy, is to tweak my job description slightly starting next September. So I focus, just gonna throw out a number, 10% of my time on fundraising from individuals to supplement.
Right, so I think, and we'll talk about your job description for the next item, but that would be revised next September to accommodate the new position. And that could potentially include a title change too, or how that would work.
I think either way, I guess what I would recommend is adding a paragraph to the memo, and I can help you with that, Cindy, just explaining what programs are being currently funded by donations, and should those donations stop, these programs would no longer be supported, or cuts would have to be made. That way it's transparent that if the funding doesn't continue, so the village board has the full set of information.
That makes sense.
And I would say that would just be the 2,400 for the story times that are kind of being covered, which would be like the priority. I think, some of the other one-time events like the Brain Week and some of those other things are covered under the DEI ask, some of the bigger events.
I agree. I think we need to stick with this 25% increase that we have on here. I think even though we know that the numbers themselves, when taken in conjunction or compared against other departments, are much smaller, the percentages look much bigger. And if it comes down to it, we have a set budget of this is how much we can spend on programming next year. And if we don't get a $4,000 donation from an individual in the community, or we don't get a certain grant, then we have to look at all of our programming and say, well, we only have this much to do this year. So maybe we can't do as many extra events because we know we want to keep doing the story times that are really popular.
So I guess the request is looking like the increase to full-time in Q4, the library program 25% increase, both of those requests are outlined in our strategic plan. And then two additional, newer asks are the DEI ABC funding for 2000, which does support a lot of our larger events and programs that we're doing. And then we can add a separate paragraph for 2400 about funding for programs that have come from external sources but are maybe not can be counted on.
Yeah, and then probably one more paragraph. The library board should, should it want to move forward with the Learning Ladder, request funds for communication strategy for referendum.
That's going to come out of the library board request.
It should be mentioned that the library board's asking for support on that. Likely it won't come out of Fund 204, which is a library fund, but it should be formally requested.
Sure. Do you all agree with, this is part of like timeline discussion, but given the opportunity of potentially acquiring the Learning Ladder sites and going to referendum for the April 1st election for, forming a public library in Cottage Grove, we would need to hire a communications firm to navigate the communication strategy from a village perspective. Is that the only, or the architect ask is coming from the village board?
We can work on that. I think specifically because we're talking about now needing because we're now talking about operating resources starting in 26 and above, kind of similar to like engineering services. We spend engineering services in 25 to prepare for 26 projects.
Right.
It's kind of like getting that ready. Like this is needed to ramp up. Now, it's very likely that should the village board want to move forward, that those funds are actually going to have to be spent in 24.
Yeah.
But that's why it should be officially asked as part of the request.
Okay. I can draft something and then maybe you can edit it for me. And then in terms of, we just had a facilities meeting where we discussed potential hiring of, if the referendum were to pass, we would move forward with hiring for maybe a start date of January 1st of 2026 for a library director. Do we need to write that into this budget request at all, or that would just cover okay.
Before we move on, I have a question. In the budget request memo here, in the first paragraph, or not the first paragraph, where it's talking about library outreach and programming specialist, and it's talking about moving it to a full-time in Q4, the last line of that, are we saying then, somehow it says this position would approximately cost in 2026 $75,000 a year? Do you mean the whole library budget? The position itself has gone from, because right now, the position is at 25 plus another 11. I'm lost. I'm
So-
very bad at math, but so I just,
Yeah, so that would encompass every, so that would wages, FICA, benefit.
Fringe.
It's a full
gotcha.
direct
Okay.
wages, and the 3750 would represent the kind of the indirect IT support, all the things that going into supporting that position.
So Cameron and I
Okay.
sat down and we looked at the spreadsheets for the positions in Wisconsin for different library positions, which we're gonna have to revisit for the rest of it and planning purposes, but that the salary would then meet the median for librarian one. It was kind of like right in the middle, the mid-range salary.
Do we need to make a note that that 75,000 includes the benefits elements, not just salary, or is that just a standard process from the village board that includes everything?
Yeah, that's, there's no
Just
additional.
includes- I don't think,
Yep.
no, it was just me not thinking about the fact that when you go to full-time, you add in all those other costs.
Yep.
So, okay.
And something that I'll present this at the budget review meeting. And I do want to do a good job of explaining to them, and then also the village board too, that the 50% increases in budgets is not like I understand that that's not typical. And going to full-time in Q4, we need to make sure that we also can continue that full-time position in 2026 then as well. So just, if that needs to be a discussion that we have next August to make sure that we are still on track to do that and do performance review in August and position description changes, et cetera, and then move that into full-time in October. But just making sure that that's just kind of being a little bit transparent with that information. So we need a motion to approve with the changes.
I move that we approve the 2025 budget request memo with changes.
And I think you have to, do we have to
And
state what changes? Yes, probably.
Please just put as discussed.
as discussed.
Okay.
Is there a second?
Seconded.
Eric? All right, it's motion by Megan, second by Eric. Any more discussion on the library board budgets for 2025? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. All right, we have discuss and consider job description and responsibilities for the library outreach and programming specialist. This is linked in your agenda. This is something that I worked with Ingo, who is the HR director. We originally, the way that this position came about, was, it's a part-time hourly position. It then, it went from 16 hours a week to 20 hours a week. It's been 20 hours a week, this as a part-time, but very forward-facing position for the community. And, we had a contract, just kind of outlining, that, Tracy and I signed at the beginning of the year, just kind of outlining duties and responsibilities, and this finally formalizes the position within the village. So I don't know if there are suggestions or edits, or if Tracy, if you have any as well. You're muted.
When I had to go through the software to provide feedback for my performance review, I indicated that I don't have any edits or changes to the job description. I just did make note there are a couple things I think do need to be considered in order for this to be a sustainable job, such as off-site storage of all the library equipment so it's not in my basement. And also, if I don't move up to full-time, I'd love to somehow figure out to have things like mileage and technology included in the budget as well. So I'm not using my personal phone and personal computer to do the job. So I indicated that in the performance review, Cindy,
Thank you.
in that budget. Yep.
All right, this is a discuss and consider. Like I said too, that this will be revised, so the goal is we'll have two, I think, check-ins throughout the year, and then the library board next year will do a survey, performance review in August, due August 31st, and then that would be documented and roll into budget discussions and potentially, revisiting titling and job descriptions.
Just best practice, when you hire a library director, that instead of the library board doing the reviews, that should be the person. I think what some communities do, they rely on personnel committees who have basically no day-to-day exposure with these people to do reviews. So it's hard to review somebody who you don't directly work. So in 2026, kind of as discussed, that would be the recommended plan. So I don't know if there's anything in the personnel, in the job description that mentions library boards doing review, but just that might be something to highlight and say, make sure we're eliminating that specific caveat.
Yeah, right now, so it's like the accountability, so like the supervision and performance evaluation is me, and then in coordination with the board. But yeah, that would, there's potential that this position could be completely rewritten, and if we hire a library director, they're gonna do so much work. It's gonna be so great. All right. This is a discuss and consider, so.
I'm not doing
Do it.
I move that we adopt the library outreach and programming specialist job description as written.
Is there a second?
Seconded.
Motion by Megan, second by Eric. Any more discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed, abstain, motion carries. All right, we have a discuss and consider a land acknowledgement statement in use, and this, I don't even know how this came up, I think probably from the Centennial. But I do appreciate seeing, like land use statements, especially when we are using the community so much and to do community programming and engagement. And I really feel like it's important for us to have this statement, and which is not linked in your agenda, but I do have it here if you'd
okay.
like to review it. I'm sorry, I did not. Or you can go to the story walk and you can look at it. But I think it's something that we should adopt. We should post potentially on our Facebook page or like our social media, our website, and then also include a printed version at programs. So I'll let you kind of review this.
Is it worth reading out loud for the public record?
Please do.
Darn it.
Okay. We acknowledge that the land within Cottage Grove Township is part of the ancestral and unceded territory of the Ho-Chunk Nation. This land was acquired through a treaty with the federal government, with the current boundaries being established in 1834. We recognize the Ho-Chunk people as the original stewards of this land and honor their enduring connection to it.
Thank you for doing that. So this is also a discuss and consider, and also open to recommendations of how you would maybe suggest we use it beyond the three ways that I mentioned.
I know it's kind of semantics, but the Cottage Grove Township,
Yeah, you just changed to Cottage Grove. So in 1830, well, it became, so there was a township
It was a
first, and there
township
was not an
first.
incorporation
Yeah.
until October 15th of 1924.
that's what I was
Well,
going
this
through
is
my head,
technical,
like,
maybe.
yeah.
Right.
I'm happy to edit that to just Cottage Grove and remove the word township.
So it would read, we acknowledge the land within Cottage Grove is part of the ancestral unceded territory of the Ho-Chunk Nation.
Yes.
So it would be,
So I'll take a motion.
I make a motion to approve the statement as edited.
Second?
All right, motion by Eric, second by Megan. Any more discussion? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? Motion carries. All right, we are going to discuss referendum needs and timeline. So this is in regards to the potential acquisition of the Learning Ladder site on Cottage Grove Road as a future Cottage Grove Village Library. And right now, the village board has been discussing and will continue to discuss and consider, the potential of this project in at the October 7th meeting. Our kind of task, I want to share kind of a rough, very fluid timeline with you of kind of where we're going between now and the end date, and then I'd love your feedback on whether there are additional milestones or deliverables that you would envision kind of needing to be integrated into this timeline. So at the October 7th Village Board meeting, I anticipate discussion on the acquisition of, or the proposal of an offer on the site, a communication plan with a consulting firm that does referendums, and also the architect engineering that would need to be hired to do the due diligence on the site, which would include evaluating ADA, looking at structural integrity for the collection purpose, to make sure that the building is A, structurally sound, and B, can be suited or, reinforced for the purposes of a library, because there are special needs for a library. Working with the facilities committee and also probably this library board on kind of vision of how we would use the space, which the facilities committee just spent 32 minutes working on that space, and what we would envision going into that space. And so those kind of three things we anticipate happening at the village board meeting. And then potentially at the October 21st meeting, if we needed to then, if we set in stone, if the village board sets forth this path, also maybe some items at the October 22nd meeting. We then kind of envision November and the very first part of December to be doing all the work. So that would be having the architect come in and sit down with us or walk through the site, developing, working with the communications firm on a strategy. And then also Cameron and I, and then and bringing it back to this board, working on capital and operational budgets so that we have kind of a little mini financial management plan just for the library so that we kind of have a better idea of what costs are associated, so that we can better determine the number that we would be taking to referendum in the spring, and asking the taxpayer for that. I think right now the December 16th village board meeting is finalizing, taking a look and finalizing that financial management plan for the library. And then the January 6th village board meeting, hopefully approving a referendum question, which is gonna have to, obviously working with the communication firm to determine how that language is, how it's written to make sure that we are within compliance of how referendum questions have to be placed on the ballot. There's a potential that perhaps we need a special meeting if we can't get that, all accomplished. So January 13th would be the date that we would target if we needed a special meeting at the village board level to kind of accomplish that. January 20th or 21st, whatever that Tuesday is, I think is the date for submission for referendum. So that's when it would be officially submitted to the state. And then there'd have to be a continuing communication plan moving forward. The election is April 1st. And then the village board would adopt and move forward, and everything starts happening then after that. So we have meetings scheduled once a month right now. And I just wanted your opinion on this. There likely might be some maybe special meetings that we would have to hold with the architect or other parties to kind of within the next couple of months to do all this work. And if there are other questions too about the potential of this project, I know that I've been working on it for a month, and so there's a lot of things in my head, and I know all of these things, but I want to make sure that I'm probably not communicating it as well as I should.
So just a quick summarize key dates. April 1 is the election.
Yes.
So working backwards, then in January, beginning of January, we need to approve, or the village board needs to approve the referendum question.
Yes. So that means we need to have all of our
We need to know
research,
how much and
how much, what has to be renovated. Yeah, how much are,
how much
how much is the
capital
building,
expenses and
right.
how much operating expenses do we need to ask
Yes.
for when we do that? And
so that's all the work that we,
and like the language of how we put that into a referendum question.
yeah, so we would like to have all of that information synthesized to the village board by their second meeting in December, which is December 16th.
In December. Okay.
And that's what you would include as the financial plan that you mentioned earlier.
Yes.
Financial management plan by December 16th.
Yes.
Okay, that's the board meeting.
Yeah.
Okay.
So this is a
So you're
very
asking
tight
how- yeah.
turnaround. Referendums typically are 9-month planning periods.
And you're asking if you think we should continue as the library board meeting once a month between now and December, or do you think we need to meet more often, or?
So right now, I think that we should keep our October meeting most likely and see what happens in the beginning of October. And then, if there is a need for us to maybe meet multiple times, we can figure that out at our October meeting. But do you think that this is a very short timeline and there's a lot crammed into it and a lot that needs to happen, but are there things that maybe we're not thinking about that should be added?
Sorry, one more clarifying question before that second part of your question there. In the village board meeting, it was brought about the communication plan regarding the referendum, and the turnaround time was 3 months?
The architect
Oh, the architect. was
said 3 months, but that, obviously, that it's 90 days, it's gonna have to meet our timeline.
Yep.
Like, it's just gonna have to. Yeah. And they're hoping that they can probably pull some information too from, you know, a lot of the, like, the quotes and work that they're doing on police station planning.
Mhm.
Some of those might be relevant that can pull over into this project too. Cameron, do you have anything to add about this timeline or anything?
No, but I'm working in the FMP model right now.
Okay. Don't tell us.
Cindy, could you maybe elaborate for the library board, what the communication plan entails versus what an outside group such as the Friends or another advocacy group might be working on?
Right, so I think that these are two very separate things, and we'll probably need to get clarification on like what the overlap is, if any, and what we can and cannot do. So we are a village, obviously, and we have to stick to a very factually based message. The communications the firm that would be hired by the village would also do that. They would be, you know, this is what it is, this is what it means. Where an advocacy group like the Friends, or there's another advocacy, you know, group of people now that are working, you know, or at least interested and present in discussions, they're the advocacy. They can push for yes or no, or, you know, and benefits and all of those things, where we need to be like, this is the site, this is what we are looking to put in it, this is how much it's gonna cost.
Yeah, I guess in simple terms, like, I get the village can't send anything out that says vote yes for this. You know, it can say this is what the money will be used for. This is what the question's going to be. So Mueller Communications would be a firm that helps do additional surveying, get a pulse of, you know, what would be supported. The library board and village board can ultimately then kind of either scale back or continue on the pace that they're at, and then ultimately, you know, take it to referendum for April 1st. Those are very hard deadlines, though. So I think just making sure that we're checking in with, you know, Lisa, the village clerk, making sure that everything's being communicated. Because sometimes you think it's on one day, and if you miss it at 4:30 on it, it's too bad. Like, it doesn't matter. So that's nothing that the village controls.
Now I have a question about the communication as well. So the Mueller work, or the Mueller firm work, is that being done between now and December-ish, you know, mid-December? And in terms of
I think
gauging
potentially,
what should be put as the question and what is palatable, and like kind of working.
this is where the 9-month timeline would have been nice, and I think that
Right.
they offer phases of communication strategy where we're not going to have time to do that, and that is work that we can do. It's also work that, you know, that's not surveying the community and giving different scenarios, obviously that is
Right.
done. But we know that this is something that the community is interested in. We then will work, you know, to come up with a financial plan that we think, and we will discuss that, you know, what we think is the community, what's palatable in this community for a potential referendum question. And we're gonna do our best work and use all the information that we can to put into that. And then they will probably help us, you know, potentially, you know, we would maybe approve a communication contract with them October 21st, but they would stay with us until April 2nd.
But the bulk of, and the scope of what we're doing as the library board really is done on, you know, January 3rd or whatever day. Like, we have to have this, not the 3rd, I can't remember the date now. Like, whatever date we get the referendum question set and submitted, like, that's it. And then from there.
Right. Granted, the
It
library
is what
board
it
still
is.
does programming.
Yeah, sorry,
and
the library board still does things,
all
but
of
in
the
terms
things
of
that we
like,
do, but in terms
we can't
of
change our
research
mind.
questions.
Yeah, research stuff, like, we can't do that in March. Like, the question has been set, and
Yes.
it's what it
Really,
will
like,
show
we
up
will
on the
know
ballot.
we will have our research phases done and presented to the village board mid-December.
Yeah.
And then,
I would foresee the only potential element that continues in that January to referendum time period would be that checking in on a communication plan. Is it working? Is there adjustments that need to happen? Things along those lines. Again, sticking to like fact-based, informing that this referendum's in there, helping people understand what is included in that referendum, trying to demystify that process, be transparent as possible, those type of things.
And that might mean like weighing in also on like our like projects websites from the village and what should be included on that and those types of things. Frequently asked questions. I love FAQs. I think I have a 45-page FAQ that's on the library board page, which I'm happy to write about.
Okay, that clarifies that part for me.
So obviously tight timeline, we have discussed, adjusting our budget memo to include the communications for the, and having that kind of language in the budget. Are there other things other library board specific deadlines that should be incorporated into this timeline? I don't know. It's to anybody. Okay. We're just gonna take it kind of one step at a time. Can I answer anyone else's questions about the process of going to referendum, and the needs, or what needs to be addressed? Like I said, it's all in my brain and not coming out well.
No, go ahead first.
I mean, I think we got a timeline, at least the bare bones of it, the key dates of April 1st election, beginning January, by January, the question needs to be settled. In December, we have the financial plan that help inform all that. On top of that, we work with the communications group and create a communication plan. All dependent on the October board meeting for the village board.
Okay. All right, should move on.
Cindy, quick question. Do we need to factor in fundraising at all into this timeline? Or are we assuming that that will strictly be done by the Friends or another group?
So in terms of, and I think I've gotten a couple emails about pledges and fundraising. I'm not 100% sure on, the messaging, I'm not sure actually. So I know like on other, Sun Prairie, a bunch of, obviously anyone that's going to do this type of work, the library has fundraising initiatives like directly on their page, and I'm assuming that that's something that we could do.
Cameron, remind me, the referendum question, the state referendum question that came through, I think with the last cycle, about outside funding.
So that question was very specific to elections.
It was election.
So unfortunately, the way the question has to be worded is extremely dry. It's gonna be, our allowable levy limit is 5.4 million. Should the village be allowed to exceed the levy by, let's just throw 600,000, and again, there's no research or scientific figure to that, which represents a 5% increase in the levy, and continue into basically perpetuity. So it's very dry. You can't, and you could say what it's used for library services. What you can't do is explain really anything past that. You can't say, fundraising efforts will be done to reduce the capital cost. It becomes very difficult. So that's primarily why, communities hire communication firms, is to get that message and the education out, because that's really the name of the game as you can kind of see, just a state trend, the approval rate for referendums is actually going down. So it really highlights the need to get communication, education out there as early as possible. And so there's a question about fundraising. So fundraising should, we can talk about, the mechanisms of that. Does the village have the capability of accepting donations? Sure. I would say Cindy and I are, you know, internally, we should discuss how that mechanism would look like. Would those funds be returned if a referendum was failed? But we wouldn't, prior to, you know, the referendum question going, if we don't have that money, either a signed pledge or it actually physically in our account, it will not be used to offset the projected operating costs. We're not gonna say we could collect 200,000 and use that a year or to defray. So it's gonna have to be the total ask. That's not saying we actually have to levy for that. But again, so we would wanna make sure that any fundraising and commitment is done by the time the question is approved.
So fundraising is part of kind of the busy work that happens in the next several months.
Yeah, so fundraising would have to be done by January 6th. Well, to offset, to be included in the consideration.
Yeah, so I would say anything that you're looking to offset the capital purchase. So when we add the operating and capital needs of the referendum, so, you know, the tax impact for that, anything that you're looking to offset that, you know, repayment we would want a commitment before the question was approved.
For capital, did you say?
For capital or opera, so like,
Or
let's say, let's just say you're able to raise 1.5 million by January 3rd. Well, we could take that 1.5, put it in the debt service fund, and now that's money that doesn't have to be levied each year to pay off, you know, a purchase of a facility. So then that makes the annual tax impact less. What we can't do is we can't anticipate revenues, because ultimately what will happen is you get in a situation where if something doesn't fall through, operations could significantly be impacted.
So based off of that, then we need to have it all finalized by the financial plan of December.
Yeah, so we need to know if there are large pledges, we would need to have that by December, a little bit before December 16th.
Then the
To-
other, sorry, go ahead.
No, that's right.
The other thing is, just because we might not have all those pledges as set forth as part of the referendum, doesn't mean that there can't be ongoing fundraising efforts, say through a third party. I'll just say a Friends of group, not saying it's the Friends,
Right.
but a Friends of group, that maybe down the line can then, in essence, I know probably wrong terminology, but in essence, donate on behalf or help offset costs, saying this comes in, and there's different mechanisms on the back end.
And I think preliminary discussions with the Friends group is that they would run a full capital campaign. Once this passes, they would do that.
And
Okay.
so they're going into two situations. So obviously, when you do a capital campaign, it can either be used for additional renovations, or you can use that money, again, offset the annual amount that has to be levied for the library, and either reduce the levy or expand your library services, because you ran a capital campaign, you've already got the approval for, let's just say, $300 or $400 annual impact in the average home. So you could fit into those parameters. And that's something, and to be clear, I plan on having a very first preliminary draft to Cindy of the kind of mini FMP by like next Monday. So then she'll get a chance to jump in there, provide some feedback. One huge variable, and Cindy and I talked about this to an extent, is there is gonna be some delayed in the Dane County tax kind of reimbursement as we draw people into that space. So the revenue for the first couple of years is likely gonna be significantly less. So finding donors to potentially offset, you know, while that revenue stream catches up, could significantly help the tax impact initially, or even what the overall ask is.
So on our list of things to do in the next 2 months is to find
months.
all of the money by December 1st. Okay. I did want to have just a brief conversation too about maybe some key stakeholders involved in this timeline. Obviously, village staff, village board, library board, facilities committee, and then the firms that are hired. Are there other groups, potential donors, which, I mean, we've had a couple conversations. And then the friends group, obviously making sure that they're informed and their membership is informed, which is not my job. Yeah. Anything that we're missing here?
Not that I can think of. However, the benefit of going through a communication plan will help us identify those other stakeholders. So I don't feel horrible saying we might be overlooking someone, but there's opportunity for us to re-identify and move forward with that.
Okay.
But that's a good start.
Right, and agree, this is a very fluid timeline, and you don't know what's gonna happen in the next couple of days or weeks, there's a lot of variables in play.
Cindy, we had talked about doing like public information sessions at Grace Coffee or Kid Safari or some of the apartments. Would that happen after the referendum has been submitted? When we're just literally sitting in the community answering people's questions?
I think that, I'd like to do that, depending on what happens October 7th, I'd like to identify some like key dates to make sure that we are communicating this properly. All the different channels, but also giving people time to come in and ask questions, and even that's kind of like almost like a mini public information session.
I view that as part of the communication plan.
That too, I think that
Yeah, I think
going forward, I think that maybe that's my role or our role, probably my role. I'll sit and I'll do the conversation. But I do want to be very transparent in like at least the next couple of months, and this is all pending like October 7th, and like I think I can work on some of that and with your help, but then once the communication strategy, they'll take over. Okay, how about we move on and do programming reports?
Okay, well, everybody has the program tracker. This is the new updated tracker that we've been using the last several months. We're on track to have between 110 to 112 programs this year. So that averages about 12 programs per month, with January and May being our slow months for planning and August being slow in general because a lot of people are on vacation. Just a quick, since the last time we met was July, a few summer highlights I just wanted to remind you all of. Pride Parade was incredible. Bookmobile Celebration, our second year, was wonderful. The Disability Pride Month was an incredibly special opportunity to really listen to the voices and talents of disabled people. I think we did that really well. And then our STEM Wednesdays were also great. We did those on Wednesdays with Playground Camp and the general public. They were very well received. Couple highlights with upcoming programs. I'll just really share some that are happening within the next month, since I'll be reporting again in mid-October. This Saturday is Fill Your Little Free Library Day, so if everybody could share that and donate any books you have lying around to the Little Free Libraries in Cottage Grove, that would be great. On Monday, it's no school day, so we have a children's author coming in to do a talk at Taylor Prairie. The Wisconsin Missing in Action program is going to be coming to Cottage Grove on Tuesday night at Drumlin Residences. This is really an adult-focused program. Hopefully, specifically, a lot of the residents that live in Drumlin Residences will be there. October is really heavy with centennial programming. Everybody knows Cottage Grove Centennial Celebration is coming up. So I've been working on quite a few programs that highlight either history or the number 100. For example, we're going to be painting 100 kindness rocks to put all around the community. We're going to be doing 100 dance steps with a country swing dancer and a few other programs as well. On October 2nd, Cindy might talk about this in her president's report, but that is the community-wide celebration, and I'm gonna set up a library board table. I'll have some kind of craft, haven't figured that out yet, and I have a bunch of history books and 100 themed books for families to get cozy and sit down and read together. If there is anybody on the library board that would like to be with me at that booth, I think that would be really helpful, because I think it's gonna be like one of our first public-facing opportunities to answer questions. So shoot me an email if you're available. Cindy, is it 11 to 3 on
11
October?
to 3 on October 12th on Reynolds Street. And can we do Sign Up Genius to sign up for slots maybe?
Sure.
We're
Should I,
we're allowed
should I
to
make
sign up
two,
Genius, right?
should I make 2 2-hour slots and send it to the library board?
Yes, please.
Okay. So look for that this week or early next week. Maybe if we could have 2 library board members per shift, that would be great. And then, of course, the community read is coming up at the end of October. I believe all the books are gone. I will swing by there in the next couple days to double check, but that was very successful. So Carol Dunbar will be here on October 24th at Granite Ridge for a wonderful conversation. A couple non-programming things I've been working on. The Story Walk now has Cottage Grove history in its little brackets, so you can go there and check that out. I've also been working closely with the Little Free Library organization to get charter plates and also have our Little Free Libraries in their app, so community members might be able to find those if they're searching for Little Free Libraries in the community. A couple just general reminders that I think will help promote events. I send everybody an invite to attend the events when I make them on Facebook. Even if you can't go, just say you're going anyway. That'll trick the algorithm and reach more people. Also, if you could take a couple minutes to invite your networks to those events, I think that would be really helpful as well. And then, of course, inviting people to sign up for the monthly newsletter. We're currently just over 100 people signed up, but that's the best way for people to have up-to-date information about the upcoming programs. There's 2 other little graphics that I made. Where are they? I don't know if you can see those, but this was basically to supplement Cindy's budget request. So
Do you want to
there's,
share your screen?
yeah, 1 second.
While you're doing that, can you consider maybe some education on people who do have little free libraries in their yards? Like maybe we can do how to register that so that it does show up on the National Registry. And then, yeah, everyone should get over and look at the Story Walk in Community Park, because I think it's pretty great. Can we talk a little bit about the parks, us doing STEAM programming during playground camp at the school, on how do we think that it went? And for me, I'd like to I want to have a conversation about exploring the option of having it there again next year if they're willing to collaborate. And then also, or is there a better location where we hit more community members? I just want to have that conversation.
I think personally the location worked out really well, and it was predominantly playground camp kids, and we would bring them out in different groups, but it didn't take away from the general public attending, in my opinion. And then we also had the school to use in the event of rain. There was a really hot day that we moved to the gym, and that transition worked really well. In terms of perhaps talking to parks about the relationship, we are paying for those contractors. I think maybe 3 did it pro bono and 3 charged us $200. So, we did pay $600 out of our budget to provide free entertainment to playground camp kids. So I don't know if the library board thinks that we should talk to parks about possibly sharing that cost so it doesn't fall on us completely.
I would think that it's worth exploring, especially if it sounds like you're saying the majority of the participants in each of those weeks of STEAM programming were playground camp kids. I mean, is that an accurate, obviously I don't think you took a head count necessarily, or,
I would say 80% of the kids were playground camp kids.
Okay. So, which is great. Those are all community kids that we want to be reaching, but you're right. Maybe it needs to be more collaborative with parks then, even in the planning or in the financial responsibility for it.
I would agree with that statement. you know, in the past, well, two summers ago, we had STEAM programming with the parks, but it also was in collaboration with the Bookmobile, and I think that brought in a lot of other community members. Probably, yeah. I mean, some of those events, there were like 70 kids there. When we had it, when it was at North Lawn Park, and the Bookmobile was also there, and it was a big draw. And so, yeah, I agree with Megan that like maybe that conversation needs to just happen, and I'm happy to email Sean and Trista and just, you know, say that we mentioned it at the library board meeting and want to explore that relationship, and then we can, obviously, we have a lot of planning time to consider changes for 2025, yeah.
And so the STEM program was from 2 to 3, and then I think the Bookmobile came at 3:15. So maybe the STEM program tilts back an hour so that we can, again, kind of create more of an event type feel.
So that conversation should happen sooner rather than later. Parks and Rec has their budget meeting next week, so they are already deciding what their rates are for those programs next year. So if you're asking for a program to have additional cost, they'll want to build that into their costing model.
I mean, it could potentially come out of playground camp income too, couldn't it? I mean, we're talking about like $300. It's not substantial
Well, we're talking about $600.
cost share.
Yeah,
$600 total.
yeah, I guess so. So every program that their Parks and Rec puts on, they have the income, the anticipated income and expenses, and a vast majority of the programs break even, just because it's just kind of the model that most Parks and Rec departments have. So, but even if it is $300, it's $300 unplanned. So that they would want to take that into account for their rates. And again, that, you know, their budget meeting's next week. So if there's a conversation had, it just has to be a quick one.
That's okay, because we're also going to that meeting next week.
Yeah,
Talk about it
that's another thing to add to additional things I've been working on. I've been presenting to the Parks Committee. I guess now this will be the second time, but the first time I mostly talked about how the library board utilizes park space. So I'll make sure that my slides include more information about the STEM programs and kind of how many people they drew in and the benefit to playground camp kids.
So I'm gonna email, I'll follow up with this tomorrow, but we paid $600 for programs at camp, and it was 80% playground camp, and just, is that right?
I'd say that's accurate.
And then we also had 3 additional free programs.
Correct.
We also negotiated the Bookmobile to come to playground camp, correct, at that spot?
Correct. Yep, we moved the Bookmobile from Taylor Perry to Granite Ridge so the playground camp kids could have access to it. It's now back at Taylor Perry.
Okay. I'll just send an email to start the conversation.
And I know we had talked at our last meeting about making our Pride event outside of playground camp, if that comes up in the conversation, Cindy.
Yes, I know, I do know that. We had talked about, and I think this might be as part of your maybe next year goals, but coming up with a rubric to gauge success of a program. I think that's a 2025 goal of yours, Tracy, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
And I think then, you know, if we are moving into a new space to do programming, that will be a helpful document to have as we onboard new people, potentially. So yes, just to show you this graph here. So I made a couple charts for Cindy's budget justification so people can see where our money goes and what kind of money we bring in. It's pretty self-explanatory. The only thing that I need to give you a little bit of update on is this miscellaneous category here. So in full transparency, I made a little bit of a mistake with a Facebook sponsorship. Instead of sponsoring the Grandparents' Day story time for $30, which is kind of my going rate, I somehow sponsored it for $30 a day. So that turned into be quite a large expense that will increase this miscellaneous category. there's still wiggle room in the budget, and I'm not at all worried about going over. But I will be meeting with Cameron next week to just make sure that my numbers match his numbers. And again, in full transparency, as soon as I figured it out, I canceled it, called Cindy, and we kind of came up with a strategy together to make sure it doesn't happen again. So just a little more accountability as a staff of one. If anybody has any questions or wants to see kind of the itemized budget, factoring this in, I'm happy to walk you through that anytime. So there's that. Sorry, I'm just gonna pull up the other one if I can see it. One second. So again, looks very similar. This is the budget breakdown, total number of money we had in the library general fund, the amount of grants and donations that came in this year, including a $1,400 carryover from 2023. The Friends of the Cottage Grove Library are sponsoring all the Carol Dunbar books, so that's a $900 gift. And then in-kind donations, I kind of went through all of the programs that we have this year where the programmers aren't charging us money and assigned a dollar value to that, knowing that our going rate for story times is $100 and our going rate for specialty programs is $200, and I came up with this number right here. Any questions about these two documents? Again, the value that I was providing to in-kind donations is also in that budget tracker if you're curious. See where that in-kind money is coming from.
All right, thanks, Tracy.
problem.
We're gonna move on to number 8, communications and miscellaneous business. Consider the approval of vouchers. 2 documents in the agenda, so we need a motion to approve the bills list.
I move that we approve the bills list.
Is there a second? Second. Motion by Megan, second by Ally. Cameron, do you have anything you want to add to the conversation or the bills list? Or anyone have any other discussion or questions?
No, the village board obviously approved the budget amendment last month, so everything should look a little bit better on track now, now that it's reallocated.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Committee reports, facilities subcommittee. We met in August, then we met a couple hours ago, and we, in August, looked at the strategic plan, and then that's pretty much all we did in August, which is what's linked in here, and I don't talk about what happened an hour ago, so. I'll let JP jump in, since I can't remember anything.
Yeah, so, again, I gotta go back and look at the facilities agenda from the previous meeting, but yeah, that was mostly around the strategic plan and kind of impact in there. Specifically, the space use was the charge, like, is that all kind of where we're looking at? And then, at the 5 o'clock meeting today, we really honed in on, kind of 2 parts, is really the space, if the village board were to go forward with acquiring Learning Ladder, what does that look like? What are those key things that we would want to include? What's the layout, especially with it being 2 floors? How we do split out between the children's and the adult and teen section, really distilling down the work from the planning for the main, like the big library, and going through the various worksheets, what kind of makes sense with the give or take 12,000 square foot space in there.
So I think, the focus of the facilities committee in August was on short-term interim space, which you'll find in it's all coming back to me now, in the strategic plan. However, we're kind of pivoting and working on this opportunity moving forward, and also kind of revising, some of our hiring and suggestions for how we would organize the library departments. So we're going to revise those documents, and I will CC everyone on that, and you'll see it at the next board meeting as well. All right, library board president's reports. The centennial is coming up, obviously, we've already mentioned that, and there are two other things I just wanted to talk about. So we were asked to report 2 times to biannual report to parks. And so again, that's happening, like Tracy said, next week. That's extra time out of programming specialist time that it takes to put presentations together and to go to this meeting. And I just wanted to let you all know that that was a request for her to go and do this for parks. Other button.
Sorry, where did that request come from?
It came from the Parks Department.
Oh, okay.
So we are including, Tracy spending programming time now making a presentation for this, for their department. And then we included the program tracker as attachments. So if you do subscribe to Village agendas, you're gonna see that library is showing up in the Parks agenda, and I just want to be clear about that, that was an ask for Parks for that time. And then I also want to just have a brief conversation about, Cottage Grove is served by the Bookmobile. It's our only form of collection. It's our library service here in Cottage Grove, and there have been significant service gaps in the last handful of years, and that included 14 weeks where we didn't have access to a Bookmobile. Was that last year or the year before when it hit a turkey? It has, 2 years ago. This year it has had maintenance issues and it has been off the road significantly, and that is a concern in a community of our size with absence to service. So I just wanted us to be aware of that. Obviously new opportunities, but it's something that is a concern for me.
That plus the fact then, but not having the bookmobile here, that then directs other people to the other libraries, which then has impacts on the various calculations with the Dane County tax and et cetera. So there's other downstream impacts to that as well.
And it hasn't been just a week here and there. It's been a pretty significant amount of time that it's been off the road. So.
I started a little spreadsheet to kind of track that, so we have actual data, and then I'm also making note of what vehicle they're sending instead. For example, the Dream Bus has adult and children's browsing, but when they send the Readmobile, there is no adult browsing, and it doesn't bring holds.
Yeah, and they are great to work with. Obviously, we have a great relationship with them, and they deliver, books to your doorstep when they are broken down and stuff. But it is in a village of this size, when we rely on that service, that when it's gone for so long, I think it hurts people, and it does drive metrics in different directions.
Yeah, I think to clarify here, like, this is not a complaint about the Bookmobile or a criticism of the Bookmobile. This is a reality of a mobile library that will have parts that break, and so then when a community is completely reliant on it, you end up in this situation.
Right. All right, Friends reports.
The Friends report is that they are very excited about the All Community Read at the end of October. And it sounds like all the books have been collected or distributed throughout the community, so they're very excited to support that. And they are looking into some more restaurant night, like collaboration opportunities as their fundraising efforts in the coming months. And obviously they're interested in whatever else is progressing.
All right, so I will make a motion, we're on 12 now, that the Village of Cottage Grove Library Board enters into closed session pursuant to Wisconsin State Statute 19.851C, considering employment, promotion, compensation, or performance evaluation data of any public employee over which the government body has jurisdiction or exercises responsibility. Is there a second?
Second.
All right, this is a voice vote.
Yes, sir.
Sorry. Eric?
Aye.
Megan?
Aye.
Kel Nelson, aye. Lisa?
Aye.
JP?
Aye.
Allie?
Aye.
Jennifer?
Aye.
We are in closed session, so bye, Tracy.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.